I love collecting mussels because you basically need no kit. You need something to collect your mussels in. I've got a horrible old dry bag with some holes in it so I can put water in it and it rinses out. But you can use a bucket or a plastic bag, literally anything. And then you probably want to be wearing like a pair of shoes and some sandals or something like that, or barefoot or wellies or things like that. So you need something to kind of get half wet in and something to collect your mussels in, and that's literally it. And then you want to be collecting your mussels in the winter months, so between September and April, and ideally collecting them on a spring low tide as well. If you collect them on the spring low, it means that you're probably getting the mussels that have been under the water for the most amount of time and technically should be the freshest ones. So they're my two rules: winter months, spring low tide, and a bag and something to get half wet in. Let's go. That's the size of mussel you want to be taking home, really. Ones like that, I'd say are too small. You want them with like some proper size to them, you know? Now there's a way of taking mussels off the rock that means that you don't get this little stringy thing. I don't know if you can see that. That there is like a little tufty, stringy thing. I think they call it the byssus. And it's just the bit that holds it onto the rock. It's just the tight bit that holds it onto the rock. But you don't really want to eat that bit because it's all gristly. And you don't just rip them straight off the rock like that. See, that keeps the byssus on there. So if you pull it not from the back like that, don't leverage it off like that way. Leverage it off through the mouth. So the stringy bit comes through that way. See that? It's now hanging out the mouth, and you can then pull it straight out. And it leaves you with normally a little bit of mussel flesh on the wall still. You can see I'm right by the water here, and it's kind of splashing on me, and I'm kind of half stood in a puddle here. So this is why you really want to be wearing sandals or wellies or something like that, really, because it's just the freshest, best mussels are going to be the ones that are kind of closest to the water, basically. So you're kind of definitely going to get slightly wet as you do this. Make your way across the wall, pulling off mussels. It's a nice process, and you just make sure you don't take too many. You don't need loads, just enough for yourself or maybe some friends or family to have a meal. You often eat them with, well, I eat them with other stuff as well. It's quite a lot of waves today. I eat them with other things as well, so remember that. Maybe bread as well, and other kind of veggies or salad are probably going to fill you up as well, so you don't need to go overboard with the amount that you take. Like I said, it's a super available food source. So if you want some more tomorrow, come back and get some tomorrow, and leave some for other people. I've collected all the mussels I need, probably about 20. I'm about to get detonated by the incoming tide. It's all very good. But we still need to prepare them because they've got like barnacles and stuff on them still, which you ideally want to be scraping off. So I'm going to show you how to prepare these and then cook them up and eat them. And I'm going to eat them for lunch. I've got my bag of mussels. I've got 2 bowls of fresh water. This one is going to be the kind of the dirty bowl where I'm going to clean the mussels off in. And then this one is my clean bowl that I'm going to put my clean mussels in. I've also got an old penknife, which I'm going to use the knife on, and maybe the pliers as well. And I'm going to use the knife to scrape off the barnacles, and I'm going to use the pliers to pull out that bit that that stays on, that tufty bit that stays on the mussels. I'm going to start by pouring my mussels into this bowl. And then one by one, I'm going to take them out and just start kind of using the knife to bash the barnacles off. And now that's ready to go in the clean bowl of water. So that one there, look, it's got that tufty stuff on it still, that byssus. And ideally you want to get rid of that, like I said before. So you can try and pull it with your fingers if that works, but sometimes that's when it's worth using the pliers just to get in there and pull those last few strands out, because they're not bad for you to eat, I don't think, but they're just not a great texture. So there I pulled it from there all the way around to there, and I can pull it out. So the whole thing's pretty much there. There's still a little bit left there, but you can get it. Maybe see if we can get that bit with the pliers. Not quite. Can be quite tricky. Snipped it off. It's not the end of the world. But that's why if you can do it on the rock's the easiest way to get that off. Because these are filter feeders, they kind of take in a lot of the material that's floating around them in their environment, and that can be like in there, like sand mainly, just gritty stuff, which you don't really want to eat. So I leave them. You basically do a process called purging, where you leave them in fresh water, so which allows them to open just enough, and it expels all of that grit. And there's been times where I've not taken the time to purge them before eating, and I really regretted it, because it's just so much nicer to not have grit in your dinner. So purging that's why I'm putting them in here. That's why I'm putting them in this fresh bowl here, because they will start to open and start to release a lot of that grit. So when you come to cook it, you don't have any of that in your meal. And that normally takes about 20 minutes. It doesn't take long. So you could put them in a bowl, and by the time it's taken you to prepare some of the other ingredients, you'll be ready to go. Right, while I'm cleaning off the rest of these mussels, I'm going to talk about why I think mussels are such an important food source. I don't think we eat enough of them. We've got such an abundance of mussels, particularly in this country, but around the world really. They have their own there's different varieties all around the world. And I don't know why we don't eat them, but I think just because they're associated with like restaurant eating, and maybe people don't really know how to forage for them, or maybe even how to cook them, or maybe there's a bit of fear around them. But all those things are really simple, and I'm going to show you how to do all of that stuff. But I think they're also really important because of how sustainable they are. We're all aware of like the horrors of the animal agriculture industry, particularly like the mass scale animal agriculture industry. So animal based protein can be, from an ethical perspective, can be quite hard to come by. Like good, well sourced animal protein that is both good for person and planet is quite a hard thing to come by, and can often be quite expensive. I'm someone who does eat animal products because I feel I really thrive when I eat them. But it's more or less impossible to find animal products that are both line up with planetary health and personal health. So most of the sources of animal protein that we're going to come across are going to be like probably not very good for the planet's health, probably not very good for our own health, most of. And then I think there's an area of animal products that is good for personal health, but maybe isn't also good for planetary health. And I think it's quite hard to find animal protein and animal products that is both sustainable for human health and planetary health. And that to me is where mussels come in, because they are apparently one of the most sustainable things you can be eating. Because, I mean, these are wild mussels, but even farmed mussels are really sustainable, because they don't use any land, they don't use any fresh water, and they don't use any pesticides or herbicides or fertilizers or anything like that. They just grow in the sea. And the places that they're farmed in the sea, they also increase the biodiversity of that area. They attract other marine creatures to that area that they're farmed. So they fit quite nicely into that ecosystem. But also their shells, I think, are made pretty much completely from carbon. So by farming mussels, the carbon in the atmosphere and in the ocean becomes sequestered in their shells. Then of course they get thrown back into the water, or they die, and then they sink to the bottom, and then that just turns into sand. So they're really good at sequestering carbon. But there's also another element, which is the kind of the sentience and ethical element. And of course, a lot of people don't want to eat animal products because of they don't want to take a life, and they don't want to kill, which I totally understand. But in the eyes of science, mussels and other bivalves like oysters and stuff like that, they're in a bit of a grey area when it comes to sentience. Apparently, they have a bit more of a primitive nervous system, and they kind of can't really be considered sentient, not in the way that, say, a crab is or a chicken is or something like that, you know. So from a maybe, I guess, an animal welfare perspective, this is a way of getting animal protein that technically doesn't take a life, which is kind of amazing, really. It's a magical thing. But of course, we don't really eat that many of them. I think that there's a bit of a grey area with that idea of sentience, because it seems that our idea of sentience is constantly shifting. You know, until very recently, people didn't even, you know, people are still shocked to find out that trees can communicate with one another. You know, for a long time we didn't consider trees sentient. like what does sentience mean? Are plants sentient? Are, you know, what is the scale of sentience? I don't know what the answer is myself. From an animistic perspective, I'd argue that everything could be considered sentient. Mussels could be considered sentient, trees, of course animals, but rocks as well. And it depends how far you want to take that. But I understand it from a kind of more traditional scientific perspective why these wouldn't be quite considered sentient in the way that other animals would be. So they're kind of largely the main reasons why I've been eating them, and why I think they're important to eat. They're also just a really fun thing to go and harvest. You know, like in the middle of winter, when there's nothing else really to forage, this is a source of really high quality animal protein that doesn't run away from you. You don't have to set up any traps. You don't have to learn any skills really. You just have to pick the like a big low tide, a big spring low tide, and have a bucket and a pair of shorts, and you're away really. I'm not much of a chef, so I'm going to do this really simply. Mussels are purging. They're going to take about 20 minutes. I'm just going to have them with an onion, garlic, a bit of butter or some olive oil. Throw a bit of white wine in there if you want, if you've got some lying around. And I like eating mine with a baguette. Okay. Okay, right, you want your pan, medium heat. I can put mine on number 7, whatever that means. In with some butter, onions and garlic. Onions and garlic are all soft now, so pretty much there for the mussels. And mussels don't take that long to cook, like 3 or 4 minutes. And the main thing is that the ones that don't open when you cook them are ones you don't want to be eating. That's the whole game here. Mussels. A little bit of wine. Lid. Just pop the lid on slightly ajar and leave it there for a few minutes. I'm also going to have a cup of tea. A cup of tea and a bowl of mussels on a winter's day. It's pretty good, isn't it? I think we're there with the mussels. It's very steamy. Very steamy indeed. I'm going to pop them off. We're pretty much there. They're all starting to open. I would say we're there now. Wow, they're super orange. That's hot. That's not ideal, is it? The old, be a screw in there somewhere now. So the most important thing with mussels is that you just want to be eating the ones that properly open. That one's open, that one's open. Most of these have opened actually, which generally means they're pretty fresh, I think. See, that one hasn't opened. So don't force that one, just pop it away. Would you like to try one? How's that? Went down pretty well. Wow, these are actually some of the best mussels I've had in a while. I think it's really worth getting them on the spring low tide. Sometimes I get them not on the spring low. And it means you can just go out to sea that extra bit further and get those like extra fresh ones. But there we are. This is what foraging is all about. And that's really how easy foraging mussels is. Do it in an afternoon with some friends. Or with your dog. See, look, that's another big one. I remember, really clearly remember picking that one. Thinking, oh yeah, that'll be a good juicy one. But didn't open. So we'll pop him aside. But I hope that video helped you on your way to forage stuff in the winter. See you next time, legends.